Hello, everybody. This week's Torah portion is called Vayetze, and it means "and he left." Last week, we were talking about the deception that happened, that Jacob felt he needed this blessing from his father in order to continue on, and he resisted not getting this blessing, and it turned out that the more you resist, things persist. And then he ended up he had to leave. Vayetze, he had to leave his father's home. And in order to escape his homicidal brother, who was so angry at him for making a deal that took away his birthright and then taking his blessing. The book of Genesis is replete with stories of sibling rivalry. It's a theme that continues from generation to generation. Started out with Cain and Abel, and later on you had Ishmael and Isaac, and Rachel and Leah. They also had sibling rivalry. They were jealous of each other because one had more children than the other. And then, of course, you have Joseph and his brothers with the sibling rivalry and jealousy came to a peak. I was looking for a theme in this week's Torah portion, and the running theme was deception. There is basically a theme in the Bible that's a lot like karma. As you do, so will be done to you. And since Jacob, even though he felt he had good reason to deceive his father, the same thing will be done to him later in life. And we'll talk a little bit about this. But as Jacob is leaving his father and mother's home, he goes and lays down for the night, and he has this vision of these angels going up and down the ladder. And that ladder represents the connection between heaven and earth. He's trying to forge a connection where we can bring God down to earth, and we can also rise and get better. You notice that the angels are going either up or down the ladder. They're not staying in one place, because in life you're either going up or down. Life does not stagnate in that process. So there's no such thing as just hanging on to one rung. You're either going up the ladder or you're going down the ladder. And that can be symbolic as well. So is deception the lesson we're supposed to learn from Jacob? There are built-in challenges about being favored. Jacob was favored by his mother, Rebekah, but he was not favored by his father. His father favored Esau. Now, Isaac was favored. Isaac was favored over his brother Ishmael. And we must not be insensitive to those who are not given privilege and gifts. Since Isaac was favored by his parents, he didn't understand how it felt to not be favored. And not being favored has a set of challenges. Is how do you react when others are favored and you aren't? How do you react when you feel things are not fair? How do you react when others are getting things that you feel you deserve? So disparate treatment causes a whole set of problems. And in order for a family or a business to run smoothly, people must be treated equally. There should be enough love in your heart to care for each person. And if you do feel a predisposition, try not to show it. Try to be as equal and as you possibly can, because if you don't, it builds resentment. And that creates a problem. Just like his father Isaac met his true love at the well, he met Rachel. He fell in love with his cousin, and the uncle said he had to work for free for 7 years in order for him to marry one of his daughters. So he worked for 7 years, and it was time for the wedding, and the woman came out veiled. And then after he committed to marry her, she took off the veil. It wasn't Rachel. It was her sister Leah. And he was very disappointed. He says, "Hey, how come you're deceiving me?" All of a sudden he got on the receiving end of deception, and he did not like it one bit. But he said he would be willing to work another 7 years to gain Rachel's hand in marriage. So he had to work for a total of 14 years. He had 12 sons. Most of the sons were given birth by Leah. He also had children with Rachel and Leah's servants. They became concubines and had children. And Rachel was having a hard time giving birth. But finally, she had one child, and his name was Joseph. So you can imagine that, again, favoritism. This was his favorite wife. Now she had a child. So you could see the seeds of favoritism and sibling rivalry are coming into this. Now, does envy is actually one of the 10 Commandments. We're not supposed to envy. Yet Rachel envied her sister Leah because she was able to have 6 children. Rachel was only able to have 1. So we see this theme of sibling rivalry, envy, and finally he needed to leave the oppressive home of Lavan because he just was not getting ahead, and he was constantly being put down and mistreated by his uncle. So when his uncle was out of town, he left with his wives and concubines and family in order to seek fortune elsewhere. Now, sometimes you must leave home in order to find home. And he moved from spiritual exile. And he moved and found his redemption from a world of spiritual and literal exile. Jacob tried his best to correct his ways, and finally his name was changed from Jacob to Yisrael. Yisrael comes from the words being straight with God. He was learning to be forthright and talk about his feelings and connect to God on a deeper level. So in the end, it is not the quick-witted victor, but the hero of moral courage who ultimately stands tall and transcends seemingly insurmountable challenges. And this was the legacy of Jacob. We're going to continue the story of Jacob next week. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to wish you the blessings of health, happiness, prosperity, and love. Have a Shabbat Shalom, a peaceful Sabbath, and a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for watching.